German aircraft carriers. The Imperial Navy had rebuilt several former merchant ships to aircraft motherships and equipped them with 2 to 4 seaplanes, which were then used to scout. In October 1918, on the 15th of April 1915, spilled and since then unfinished turbine liner Orsonia was elected to be converted as an aircraft carrier and called Aircraft Steamer 1. Small aircraft carrier, Project Moser. While the Graf Zeppelin was still under construction, the High Command of the Navy presented considerations for a series of small aircraft carrier, similar to the Allied escort carriers. First, a ship in the 12,000-ton class was focused, but changed to a draft of 6,000 tons. Officially referred to as small aircraft carrier, there have been very few projects. The most advanced was the Project Moser, named after the responsible chef engineer Hans Moser. None of the designs issued a works contract. Small aircraft carrier. This design was created on the initiative of Dr. Heinrich Draeger, the owner of the company Dragerwerk of military equipment. The idea behind the project was the need for a fast, inexpensive to produce carrier, which should facilitate its support, while that large carriers like the Graf Zeppelin were far too costly and time-consuming. The concept of Draeger foresaw the wolf-pack tactic of the submarine force. A further advantage was the small size, which allowed many smaller shipyards to build this type of vessel. Draeger put his design on January 27, 1942 in front of the head of Technical SS and Police Academy SS Brigade Commander and Major General of the Waffen-SS Professor Gerloff. This presented the draft again 2 days later to the head of the Order Police SS Group Leader and Lieutenant General of the Waffen-SS Kurt Dalwager, who had close ties to Himmler and Hitler. However, the draft was not well received and was not taken into account because it had nothing to do with the SS. On the 10th of February 1943, the SS gave the project to the Air Force. However, the Air Force had no great interest in the project and declined on October 11, 1943 without further comments. Auxiliary aircraft carrier Jade. The passenger ship Gneisenau of the Norddeutsche Lloydreeder A was one of the ships selected for the carrier construction program in the year 1942. With the outbreak of World War II, the Gneisenau was first requisitioned by the Navy and used as a troop transport. On May 13, 1942 started the first detailed studies for the conversion. By the stability problems of the Gneisenau and the relatively high fuel consumption, the project was abandoned again on November 25, 1942, without any work done to the ship. Auxiliary aircraft carrier Elbe. The passenger ship Potsdam of the Norddeutsche Lloydreeder A was one of the ships selected for the carrier program in the year 1942. With the outbreak of World War II, the Potsdam was requisitioned by the Navy and used as a barge, together with the auxiliary aircraft carrier Jade. The former Gneisenau, they should form the Jade class, unlike the other ships. The rebuilding of the Potsdam was not deleted in November 1942, however, the ship should be used only as a training support because of its low speed, through material shortages. The work was stopped at the ship on February 2, 1943 and never taken up again. Auxiliary aircraft carrier Wesso. The Seydlitz was originally the fourth ship of the heavy cruiser Admiral Hipper class. In August 1942 it was decided to rebuild the ship to an aircraft carrier, as it was done already to 90%. First it was necessary a deconstruction to make room for the flight deck. The demolition required the removal of all weapons and the dismantling of the structures. The four turrets with their two 20.3 cm guns were installed as coastal artillery in France. By order of Hitler, dated on January 23, 1943, all large surface vessels were to be decommissioned, and the work was stopped at the ship. When building was stopped on the Seydlitz. Still, the chimney and some other constructions were on the upper deck. At the end of March 1944, the ship was towed from Bremen about Kiel to Königsberg. where it arrived on April 2nd and was used in December 1944 as barge. Because of the advance of the Red Army, the ship was sunk on the 10th of April 1945 at its mooring in the port of Königsberg. The wreck was raised in 1946 by the Soviet Navy and towed to Leningrad, as it could potentially serve as a spare parts store for the former Lutzow. In fact, it was registered on March 10, 1947 in the ship list, but then deleted again on April 9, 1947 and scrapped. Auxiliary Aircraft Carrier 1. The passenger ship Europa of the Norddeutsche Lloydreederei was the third ship chosen for the carrier program the year 1942. She was the largest passenger ship in Germany at the time. With the outbreak of World War II, the Europe was requisitioned by the Navy and initially used as a barge, and from 1940 as a troop transport. As with the Gneisenau, the program was halted in November 1942 because of stability problems and high fuel consumption. After the war, the ship was confiscated by the U.S. Navy and put into service as the troop transport ASAP 177. In 1946, the ship was delivered to France and there used under the name Liberty, and in 1962 again as a passenger ship. Auxiliary Aircraft Carrier 2. With the conquest of France in 1940, many French ships fell in the hands of Germany, among others the under-construction cruiser de Grasse. Under the carrier program, it was decided to rebuild the de Grasse as aircraft carrier. However, the work was stopped again in February 1943 by the high cost of materials and the constant threat of air strikes and sabotage of the resistance. After the war, the ship was dismantled by the French. Due to lack of money and modern technology, the ship could not be put into service until September 3, 1956. Graf Zeppelin class. On November 15, 1932, the government paper provided the construction of an aircraft carrier for the German Navy. The Navy wanted in 1934 already to have 3 aircraft carriers in its fleet. In the 1920s and 1930s, France was considered as the main enemy at sea, and aircraft carriers should support in a war the German warships in the Atlantic in a trade war against France. By the Anglo-German Naval Agreement of 1935, Germany was no longer bound by the Versailles Treaty in the area of warships, and this paved the way for the construction of aircraft carriers. England allowed Germany with this treaty to build 35% of any warship category of the British fleet. For aircraft carrier, this allowed 2 units of the size designed in 1934 for the Graf Zeppelin class. Since Germany had banned by the Versailles Treaty the construction of aircraft carriers, it also lacked any experience in carrier construction. In April 1934, a working group under the engineer Wilhelm Hardler started with the design work. The draft initially was based on the pattern of the British carriers of Courageous class. In addition, they sought to exchange information with Japan. In 1935, a German study commission headed by Ernst August Roth traveled to Japan. This finally originated a carrier design largely independent of foreign influences.